Okay, I'll call the workshop meeting together, and we have, for first thing on the agenda is the CCUA debt service for Bel Aire and Mr. Adam Pope. No, I'm
Greg
sorry.
Varenberg. Yes.
Greg Vernberg. I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right.
Had
No,
to-
no worries at all.
I said that. I said, no, that's not him. Okay.
Well, good evening, everyone. Greg Varenberg with Raymond James.
Is your microphone on?
I believe it is. Is
Okay.
that better?
Thank you.
Greg Varenberg with Raymond James. And our firm serves as the municipal advisor for the Chisholm Creek Utility Authority. And appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening and talk to you about the outstanding bonds for the authority. I've been fortunate to work in Kansas on bond issues for about 30 years. And so was fortunate in 2002 to work with the authority on the actual original bond issue. Worked pretty closely with Gilmore and Bell in drafting the legal framework for the bond issue or the trust indenture. We went through the process of structuring the original bonds and working with the insurance company to have a bond insurance policy assigned to that. And so what I wanted to do this evening is walk you through some of the various series of bonds that were issued by the authority, what the purposes were, how the funds were spent or allocated. And then at the end, I've got an aggregate debt service schedule that shows the remaining payments on all outstanding bonds. And then happy to answer any questions related to prior bond issues or how proceeds were spent or any questions you might have regarding the indebtedness of the authority. But if you'll look at page 3 of that report, this is really the very first series of bonds. Bonds were issued in March of 2002. So right at 20 years ago. The principal amount of the bond issue was $28,980,000. And again, this was the original financing that was put together by the authority to provide funds to build the plans. And so you'll see out of that $28,980,000, there was about $12.5 million spent on water projects, about $11.3 million spent on wastewater projects. At that time, the agreement with Park City was for the authority to redeem and pay a certain outstanding bond issue for Park City. You'll see that was about $2.2 million, and kind of that bond issue financed certain assets that were being moved under the umbrella of the authority. And then also there was a deposit to a debt service reserve fund of about $2.1 million. And that'll be important to point out how that reserve fund will be used or allocated, and I'll show you that as we get into the allocation of the debt service and the aggregate debt service payments that you have remaining. So that bond issue, again, was primarily what we call new money or providing funds for a project or construction. There was a refunding component, but the refunding was really refinancing that Park City issue, pulling that under the umbrella of the authority. Those bonds were issued at an interest rate of 5.15%, which at the time we were excited about, and at the time was a very favorable interest rate, but we've been in a much lower interest rate since then. What you'll see on some of the subsequent series of bonds is that we captured a savings from refinancing and lowering the interest rates. So the next page, page 4, shows the next series of bonds. It was about $7.2 million. It was an advance refunding, and it's important to keep in mind when you do a refinancing of a bond issue, it's a little bit different than if you're refinancing a home loan. If you're refinancing a home loan or another type of financing, you typically take out an entire new financing to pay off the entire old financing. But on a bond issue, we can actually go in and look at each principal payment or each maturity of a bond issue and determine which portion we can refinance that produces a savings and go in and carve out just that portion that produces a savings and replace that with new bonds at a lower interest rate. And then also there are times where it's advantageous to issue less than 10 million in bonds. And you may have seen this on some of your city bond issues. There's a designation that is called bank qualified. It's a tax treatment to banks when they buy your bonds. it helps get a lower interest rate because of that favorable tax treatment, and banks are willing to accept a lower rate. So I know as we worked on some of the refinancings, we intentionally kept them less than 10 million per calendar year in a couple of situations. So again, in 2004, this was our first refinancing opportunity. We went in to that 2002 issue and we refinanced the years 2013 through 2020. That was the portion that we carved out and replaced with new bonds at a lower interest rate. I will say we're showing a savings here of $98,000, and we had a difficult time going back and actually finding the savings report from that 2004 issue. I actually think in looking at this issue, the savings was probably a little larger than that, but we worked with the escrow verification agent to try and reconstruct this. I know that at least there was 98,000 in savings, probably more than that, given a $7 million refinancing. But again, we didn't extend the debt. We didn't shorten the debt. We just went in and carved out a portion of it, replaced it with new bonds at a lower interest rate. And the interest rate on that 2004 refinancing was 3.99%. So same thing happened in 2007. We continued to watch where interest rates were at, the bonds that were considering refinancing, when they can be called or redeemed. And a savings opportunity surfaced again in 2007. Going back again to that original 2002 issue, we refinanced the maturities or principal payments coming due in 2021 through 2032. Captured a savings of $947,222, and that's was an interest rate of 4.45%. So again, didn't extend, didn't change the repayment schedule. This captured a savings and lowered your interest expense. So in 2012, and this is shown on page 6, we actually had a little bit of a different bond issue. In this situation, we were looking at a refinancing, but we also had what we consider a new money component. And the new money component was a little different than just taking money, putting it in a project fund, and you go out and construct improvements. There was an agreement going into 2012 where Bel Aire had made some improvements. I believe they were financed with a Bel Aire temporary note. And then when that temporary note came due, it was rolled into this 2012 bond issue. So we had $6.4 million in bonds that were issued in 2012. The savings on the refinancing portion, which was, refinancing a portion of the 2004 bonds in this situation, the refinancing produced savings of $391,622. Inside of that $6.4 million principal amount of bonds, we also had redeemed and paid off those Bel Aire temporary notes. This issue had a much shorter repayment schedule, so it had a lower interest rate. 1.98% was the true interest cost on that issue. One of the other developments that occurred in 2012 was that the prior bond issues of the authority did not have a direct rating, a bond rating of the authority itself. They were insured by a municipal bond insurance company, and so they had a AAA rating associated with the insurance company. In 2012, and this was after the financial crisis, the 08-09 financial crisis, it became important for the authority to have its own rating. And in this situation, we were able to get a Standard & Poor's rating of A, which is the credit rating of the authority. But it also made sense to go ahead and use bond insurance again from Assured Guarantee on that issue. 2007, on page 7, the 2015 bond issue. This was actually not a refinancing. This was a new money project, and it was primarily some energy conservation improvements that were done by the authority. About $1.87 million. There was a cash contribution, as you'll notice there at the top, $490,000 from the city of Park City, and the total deposit to the project fund was about $2.2 million. So there were $2.2 million of improvements made. and they were primarily energy conservation related improvements. Typically in a situation like that, you'll have the projected savings from the improvements covering the cost of debt service. And so the project, pays for itself, if you will, from the savings that is generated. So the next issue, and this was the last bond issue of the authority, in 2017, we issued $13.5 million in refunding bonds. This was a refinancing of the 2007 bonds in the years 2020 through 2032. This one actually had quite a bit more savings than some of the others. Total savings was $1,830,904. And the average interest rate on that issue was 3.25%. And so when you look at the combination of those various refinancings that were done, and again, the 2004, we may be understating that savings, but at a minimum, the cumulative savings for the authority, and this benefits both cities, is the $3,268,083. And that is net of all costs. That's the actual amount saved by the authority. And so it has accumulated to about $3.2 million in savings. Again, none of those refinancings were restructuring or extension of debt. It just simply going in and replacing bonds at a lower interest rate. So when you then kind of shift the focus of the discussion to what bonds are outstanding, some of the bonds, those original series, like for example, 2002, have been refinanced entirely, or the principal payments that were made. So there's no longer principal outstanding on that original 2002 bond issue. The bonds that have principal outstanding are really four different series, or four different series now. The 2007, 2012, 2015, and 2017. The total principal amount outstanding is about $19.67 million. And then if you look at the portion that is callable, that's what we oftentimes will look at to see, is there an opportunity to go in and capture more of a savings? Really the only way you can capture a savings is have bonds that can be prepaid early or that are callable, and then you replace those bonds with new bonds at a lower interest rate. We've looked pretty closely at this as we've been in a record low interest rate environment for the last couple of years. That 2012 issue has a very small amount of savings. If the authority were to do a new money bond issue, we may include a small refinancing along with that, but on its own, it's not enough savings. The cost of completing a small refinancing would be more than the savings that would be generated. But we have been watching those to see if there's any additional savings opportunities, and we'll obviously continue doing so. So when you look at page 13, that $19.67 million, this is what the principal and interest payments or debt service payments look like. You have payments going out to the year 2036. But I want you to focus in, if you will, on the year 2032, because you'll see a larger debt service payment there. It goes from annual payments of about $2 million up to $3.8 million. But you'll notice the footnote below that debt service reserve fund that was established and funded in 2002 was designated to be applied towards the last payment on the 2002 bonds. And so when you get to the year 2032, out of that 3.8 million, 2.1 of that will be paid from the reserve fund. So it'll leave you a net payment of about 1.7 million. So I wanted to point that out. It's a little deceiving, and especially if you look at the charts on page 14 and 15, you'll see that spike there in 2032, and kind of begs the question of why would you do that? But it's entirely related to that reserve fund paying part of the payment. The net amount is to be paid from the two cities through the purchase of water and sewer usage that generates the revenue that the authority is using to make the debt service payments. So when you get in 16, gives a little, or page 16, sorry, gives a little more detail on the exact payments related to each series. This really matches up with that summary table that I was showing you earlier. So then you get to page 18, and you look at base charge or allocation of debt service. And so when the financing framework was put in place in 2002 in the trust indenture, there was this intent to have a take or pay concept where each city would be obligated to take or pay a certain minimum amount. And inside that minimum amount, it would cover debt service on the bonds. And so part of the purchase price for water, if you will, would be the O&M component, operations and maintenance expense. But then there's also a component referred to as base charge. And the base charge is really the portion of the water rate that was intended to be used to pay debt service on the bonds. And so originally there was an allocation between the two cities for water and wastewater with this concept of a true-up mechanism. And so that as cities grow at a different pace or have usage at a different pace, this true-up mechanism allows you to settle up, if you will, at the end of a year. And that then will allow for the allocation for the two cities to be correct based upon that change in usage or change in growth for the two cities. To give bond investors comfort at the time this financing was put in place, we had to agree to a split between the two cities and then tell investors that each city had an obligation under that take or pay agreement to either use that minimum amount needed to generate the revenues to repay the bonds, or if there was a shortfall, then you would actually pay for that differential that you didn't use. So that pay component of the take or pay would get to the point where bond investors knew that there was an allocation or enough revenue allocated between the two cities to make the debt service payment. The true-up mechanism is really the piece that allows for, and you can imagine discussions in 2002, and we're trying to think, well, we can't project at what pace the cities will grow, what usage will be over a 30-year period. So the true-up mechanism was that piece that allowed for adjustments to be made and settle up at the end of each year. The one, I should say it's more than one, but the complicating factor along the way in terms of allocation between the cities is we've had various bond issues where we've had cities contribute cash rather than finance their portion. I shared with you in one situation where Bel Aire, or Park City, I believe, had like $490,000 of cash that was contributed. That was because they didn't want their portion financed. They wanted to just pay cash for it. So that then changes that allocation. If one city is financing, one city is paying cash. I mean, even those initial contribution of assets and the refinancing of the Park City bonds in 2002, trying to keep that balance fair, have the true-up mechanism be that piece where you could settle up and make any adjustments based upon usage and growth each year. But then those complicating factors along the way were if there were projects specifically related to one city and not both, or if one city, or if there's a project where one city pays for it with cash, the other city decides to finance it. So this schedule on page 18 is one that I believe the Bond Council has kept track of the intended agreements between the two cities and these events that caused a change in the allocation. To my knowledge, this is the most recent allocation that the cities have been working for on page 18. And it's different than that original framework that was put in place in 2002 because of some of those events that have happened along the way. And then lastly, if you're interested, I did include the rating report for the authority. This does talk about how the rating agency Standard & Poor's arrived at that A rating for the authority, and then kind of how they look at the framework, the underlying payments being made by each of the two cities, and how they arrived at that rating. I thought you might like to see it. I'm not sure if that's specifically what you'd like to see, but I included it in the report. So I know the request of me this evening was to come and give a summary of the bonds that were outstanding, some highlights of kind of what each series was related to along the way. And so I hope this report and the discussion is helpful for you to kind of see some of those various steps and savings and new money bond issues that were done both initially and throughout the life of the authority.
Great.
So I will stop there, but happy to answer any questions, or if there are other topics you'd like for me to address, happy to do that as well.
Yeah, this certainly answers some questions that I had about some of the funds and what we were doing, but, well, I can't remember. I had a question about these. They'll probably come back to me. Does council have any questions for Mr. Greenberg? On the allocation, the true up, was it your understanding that the true up was to only cover operations and maintenance, or was it to cover some of this bond debt as well, or what was the, how did you understand that to be?
Yeah, well, and that, and happy to pull together the information in the bond documents that describes that true up. But I believe there was an intent on the base charge for a set allocation. And this goes back to the initial. The intent was to have a base charge allocation that each city would be obligated to pay. And then above that, you have the kind of this O&M component. But what has changed that allocation from some of those original discussions is these side agreements and contribution to cash. And it's really kind of complicated that process from what it was intended to be in 2002. For what it's worth, there's one other joint authority in Kansas, and I was fortunate to work with them on creating their authority. And I would say their situation is kind of much simpler, much cleaner, in that no one contributed cash, no one contributed assets. There was this agreed upon split, and then the true up is just simply based upon usage and growth and looking at where each city is at each year. And so it makes that true up mechanism relatively simple, because you simply look at who paid what and who used what, and then you settle up. And as long as you're meeting those minimum levels, then you have enough money to pay debt service on the bonds. And obviously you're generating the O&M component to cover operating and maintenance costs.
So their true up actually includes the debt service as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but here, where you go back to that original contribution of assets by Park City, and I believe there was certain components that benefited certain cities. Like I believe there was maybe a water tower that benefited Bel Aire early on. It was kind of part of all of this. I mean, those pieces then take that original intent and that allocation, and they start adjusting it a little bit. And that's what you see here is that allocation spreadsheet is an attempt of bond counsel to stay on top of what has been agreed to, where are we at on these agreements and splits, and it all kind of ties back not only to what the original intent was, but some of those adjustments along the way. So I don't know if that answers your question on how the true up was intended to work, and then how it is working now.
Yeah, it kind of does, but it's still a little bit foggy, but okay.
And I'm happy to send over the language in the legal documents. Maybe that's a good place to start, or as a follow-up to this, so you can see exactly the wording of what the intent is and how that's intended to work.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would probably be very helpful.
Okay.
If you could do that. Thank you. So just a quick summary of a couple of things I gleaned out of here is that you said that Park City contributed $2.27 million in the initial 2002 bond issue, and then contributed another $490,000 in a, I don't know what year it was. Got it noted here. Okay. And the 2015 revenue bonds. And then Bel Aire took an additional $181,000 in the 2012 refunding bonds.
Yeah, and I should go back and clarify on 2002 to make sure there's not any confusion. I had referenced that one of the uses of funds from the 2002 bond issue was to refund, you'll see the line item there, refund outstanding bonds of Park City, $2,270,000. So the authority assumed paying that debt. They paid off the debt of the city with the authority's bonds.
Mhm.
But if you look up at the top, the Park City equity contribution, you'll see a contribution there of 1,801,000. So really, if you think about it, Park City contributed cash or equity of 1.8 million, and the authority agreed in turn to pay off debt of 2.2 million. So it's really a net of like 400,000.
470,000.
Yeah, in that situation.
Yeah, I forgot about that piece, but thank
Yeah,
you for
it's
that
important.
clarification. It is important.
400,000 is a
Yeah.
little different number than 2.2 million.
Right.
So I want to make sure I didn't
So it is,
confuse you with that.
yeah.
And when the authority paid off that debt, was it paying off with cash or paying off by issuing bonds that are then split between the cities?
Yeah, I mean, think of it as it's paid from the bond proceeds, and really the net contribution from the authority was, the authority used bond proceeds in the amount of 2.2 million, but they used total proceeds, of which bond proceeds were a portion. Of that 2.2 million, 1.8 million was cash contributed by Park City. So you have the net 2,270,000 less 1,801,000. So 470,000 that is really then paid for from authority bond proceeds. So in 2002, the authority took on debt, a net amount of debt of 470,000.
Do any of these bond documents say that the obligation is a different percentage than 50-50 between the two cities?
I believe, and I can't remember whether it's water or wastewater, but I believe there's a 50-50 on one component, 53-47 on another component.
And do you know the logic behind that, why that would be?
It was the engineer at the time, and really, so the engineer at the time of the project was coming up with an agreed upon amount to split. But if you think about it, that true up mechanism, that percentage split was to a certain degree irrelevant, because the true up mechanism was intended to then balance things out. And so there was this kind of agreed upon percentage. It really becomes applicable if the cities are using less than the take or pay amount. Then you know that, okay, if it was water that was split 50-50, if neither city is exceeding the take or pay minimum, then you're going to have to, both cities are going to have to come up with usage and cash to get to that 50% that you're taking and paying. But when you have, you kind of grow past those minimum levels, then the true up mechanism kind of balances it out based upon usage.
Okay.
So if you think about it, the percentages are probably more meaningful if you're below the minimum amounts needed to generate funds for operation and paying debt service. And then the true up balances things out when you get above that.
So the true up was intended to take care of the debt and balance the debt out based on usage.
Yeah, I want to double check the language, but I believe
Okay.
the base charge was intended to be in there.
Okay,
But I will confirm that for you.
thank you. Appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
do the bond documents require there to be a true up process between the cities? Right now, I don't believe there is a true up process. Those agreements have expired. And so I'm just curious if there's anything to be concerned about from a bond document perspective.
Well, I think it was provided in the bond indenture itself, and that is the governing body, kind of the framework legal document for the financing. But again, I'll get you a full copy of the indenture and then extract the language related to the true up. It's either that, or if not, it would have been in an ancillary document that's all part of the bond transcript that talks about the true up mechanism.
Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Varenberg?
Most people just call me Greg.
Greg.
It's a lot easier.
Any other questions for Greg?
Well said.
Well, this has been very informative. I appreciate you going through this. I looked at some of these documents a couple weeks ago. Somebody, I think Ms. Kelly provided them to me, not the complete package, obviously, but it was boggling my mind, and you sure cleared up a lot for me. So
Well,
I appreciate it.
Even then, there's a lot to absorb and a lot to to keep track of in terms of how this all evolved and the base documents that were put in place and the agreements that have occurred kind of along the way. So I do hope that this help clear up some of your questions, and I'll be happy to provide any additional information you need as you think about this.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you all.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for having that summary done. I assume you were the one that initiated that. It was very, very helpful and good information that we're going to need going forward, along with the future supplied information. But thank you.
I think Mr.
Mr. Lasher is the one I really need to thank. Well,
deserves more
thank you for
credit than I do.
appreciate it.
I
That
mean,
was very
I'm sure I had the influence on it, but he
well.
was,
No,
he was the driver.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Henry, budget for 2021 year-end report. Cool.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
see you
Mayor.
got good news.
I think we'll probably do the summary tonight, unless you guys want to go line one of the 23-page document. But
Summary's fine.
I think the one I'm going to be operating off of is this one. Starts on page 26 of the packet, and I did put it up there. It's hard to even read, so I'll probably just let you guys follow along as we go. 2021, we had a good year. I think we've done a lot to improve our year by our refinancing and taking steps that, and as far as growth steps that we've seen throughout the economy. The first thing to notice is sales tax receipts were about 10% over our estimates, and I'll get on that in the second page. As well as we built 178, or we took in permits for 178 new homes, and that really helps out on the revenue side of things and stresses staff a little bit. I can say, for one thing, we had to move one of my employees from half court, half planning and zoning to full-time planning and zoning just to take the load off on 2021. What it all equals good things for the city, where it's about 312 unanticipated revenues came in. On the expenditure side, everything was from the personnel, contractuals, and commodities. We did a lot of work on personnel. I updated some things. We still came in under my update from when we readjusted the pay scale. On the contractual side, we're about $70,000 under, but a lot of that has to do with the way we have to budget $23,000 in savings for unused inmate housing fees. I can't project it, as well as you can on when we have to inmate house maybe a criminal that we catch, as well as land engineering fees. As you might remember, a couple of years back, we found out that some of our lots were in a floodplain, so we had to engineer them out of the floodplain and redesign. A lot of that with our land sales, which is great, is going to go away. So that's good savings for the city, and we can put that to more useful purposes. On the land debt side, as you know, we saved about we did save $176,000, a little over, in 2021, and then continue on that savings through the life of the loan. As well as once we sell land, we experience special assessment savings that we once were paying that now we're no longer paying. That equaled about $239,000 for 2021. All told, about $676,000 in unanticipated savings. That all adds up to about $990,000 that we have that we weren't planning on with the 2023 budget or 2022 budget that we're heading into. So that, as you guys know, and the way I try to steer our council and we budget, we hope to end with a little bit more money than we thought, so that we can push that forward to the next year, as well as address some concerns we have. On page 27 of the, and I'm not sure if you want page 2 of my report or page 27 of the agenda packet, but I'm going to go with agenda packet. Page 27 of the agenda packet really just shows in graph forms of where my estimates were, and the green line is where we did what we did in 2021. Christmas was a really good year this year, and that's where you kind of see the increase in sales tax on the December receipts. We'll move now to the water fund. with growth, we also have tap fees, and that's kind of the shining variance in our water fund. We collect about a little over 300,000 in tap fees, and that's all related to new homes being built. On the revenue side, on the expenditure side, both water and sewer all kind of have the same theme. We got relatively lucky, knock on wood, with kind of those emergency fixes. If you've been here for a few years, you know we've have found mop heads in lift stations. We've had to redo full sections of water lines unexpectedly. So luckily, and I hope this trend continues in 2022. We found some savings on the water fund, about 44,000 in savings on emergency repairs. As you know, Ann and our public works staff we've been building a lot of different improvements, and some of the capital outlay expenditures that we do plan for water and sewer each year are kind of bleeding into 2022. So I did put an asterisk towards that line. That was the money we had intended to spend in 2021. The projects are on their way. It just might all get expended in 2022. But I think putting it under 2021 is a better representation and a summary for you guys to know. All told, we did pretty well in the water fund, but my note on the I guess net change in net fund balance or net profit, if you subtract the $300,000 we collected in tap fees, the water fund collected or had profited about $2,000 in 2021. So that's something we look for as well. On the sewer side, a lot of the same themes are related. Again, tap fees helped with the revenue side of things. We saved a lot more. We have a lot more lift stations for sewer, and a lot more things can go wrong. So we saved about 130,000 in unused emergency repairs on the sewer side. I'll look at that, and hopefully that's a trend where we've invested in some of these newer pumps in recent, and maybe I can lower that and we can put some more money towards capital outlay or improving our sewer system in future years. But again, all told, if you were to take out any kind of sewer tap fees or those one-time revenues, we would be a little bit under profit, be minus 43,000 for the sewer side. But we do have that ending balance to address any needs in the future that we might have, or to help protect us from any rate shock or any expansion that might come in the future. So that's what that's there for. Page 30, I did make a few changes on this. I don't know if you can see it very well in my presentation, but it's our solid waste fund. Really, it's a trash and recycle fees come in, and we pay waste management. And also on the expenditure side, we also have $100,000 that we transfer as a street maintenance fund, because these trash trucks drive all over our roads, and we need to help repairing our roads with that money. On the stormwater fund side, we have a small fee for residential and commercial. We collected $87,000 in 2021 in revenues, and only spent $50,000. We do have a running up a little bit, $300,000 in ending balance. Sounds like a lot, but when you're buying culverts, Ann told me that's not going to go too far. So we do plan on spending us all the way down to about $25,000 in 2022. But it's a matter of when we're wanting to jump on replacing that culvert or culverts, or how many projects we want to do. A lot of these projects are bottlenecked, and with the way things are in the economy, everybody's wanting something, as well as time to get bids and get it going. So we're looking to improve that in 2022, but that's why you'll see maybe a little larger ending balance in the stormwater fund. On the street maintenance side, and I'll just kind of touch on it, I know we spent a lot of time on the street maintenance budget this past year. The state fuel tax and county fuel tax, this is my plug. Gasoline tax hasn't, I don't think, been increased since 1993. I think our cars have gotten a little bit more efficient, and with electricity coming on, it's really an interesting case study. No politician is even going to touch the gas tax because it's a direct hit, but it is a concern for. We have to maintain our roads, and it's simply the user fee of gas is not keeping up with maintaining roads. I just like pointing that out just because. But on the expenditure side, we did a little bit more in purchasing raw materials instead of contracting out. So that's why you'll see we were $44,000 under in capital outlays, but we were well that over in street repair materials for paved and gravel roads. On page 32, this is the equipment replacement fund. In 2021, we purchased the 2021 police vehicle, an international dump truck, and a laptop computers for the police department. All these funds are non-budgeted, means we're going to come bring it to you and you're going to vote it yes or down before it's expensed. And all these expenditures are planned in a 5-year chunk during budget season. So I added the 2022, what we have up for schedule replacement for 2022. Simply go through the line. Watch guard server for police videos, 2022 police vehicle purchase. The public works been using a certain street sealing machine. They've been renting it. We threw it in as a priority to purchase this machine so we can actually do more than we can. So that will probably be before you here in the next couple of months. Mini excavator. We do need to replace a fleet truck, which that 45,000 is going up and up. It's about 60,000 now, I think, just because of the market right now for new and used vehicles. Also some mowers we're going to bring before you for your approval. Keith Price, our planning and zoning, his truck's due for replacement. And then utility task vehicle for rec is also due for replacement. I just bring those to your attention that you're probably going to see those in the next year. And it'll probably be someone like Brian or Dave or Ann in front of you. And that's where that comes from. All told, if we do all those expenditures, we'll leave about 300,000 in that fund. A pretty good ending fund balance, but I think we're going to need it when a dump truck could cost us, $160,000 or $200,000 if we need emergency. On page 33. We have the Capital Improvement Reserve Fund. Again, it's a non-budgeted fund, and you guys have talked about this one at length. The reconstruction of Baton, the slurry seal of 7 neighborhoods, thermal crack repair, street evaluation, and GIS. All these things add up to about $1.6 million. The only thing pending we had in 2021 was 47th Street reconstruction. I believe we just approved that bid maybe last council meeting or council meeting before. So the slate should be clean and ready for our selections next workshop, I believe. But we did end that ending balance with $328,000 in our Capital Improvement Reserve Fund. I stuck ARPA funds in here. I know I'm not sure if Mayor Benaj reported or not, but the Treasury final guidance came out, and it's allowing basically a standard deduction. If you think of your city taxes or if you think of your personal taxes before, each city got a standard deduction of $10 million. So we're able to use these funds as revenue loss in the eyes of the federal government. So this would essentially unlock it for uses for general governmental purposes. So I added that to this equation. And then if you turn to page 34 of your packet, you'll see in the 2022 budget had $780,000 scheduled to be transferred from the general fund to the Capital Improvement Reserve. I didn't represent it because I want your guidance first, but we did end the year with about $990,000. So I imagine some of that, if not all of that, will be transferred as well. So if you add all those numbers up, you get about $3.3 million. That's including the ARPA money that we could potentially use for capital improvements throughout the city. Now, I know this council's been laser focused, and I believe it's sometimes our job to say, hey, there are other capital improvement needs out there that we need to at least consider or look at in the next 10 years. And I listed some of those. I know you can shake your head and laugh, but it's little things like tornado sirens that go up as you build PD garage and shelter. We're always looking at protecting our assets. New public works facility is going to have to be on our long range plan as our city grows, as well as HVACs, upgrades. Those aren't cheap for these big buildings. So just something to consider. I'm not asking. I just will keep them in front of you as we move forward and as we grow as a city. We can't. We're not left with behind the eight ball, I guess. The next big scenario, the land bank fund. In 2021, we did about $2.2 million in land sales. We did put additional debt service on our land debt payment of $1.6 million with our refinance. That helped out a lot and lowering our overall debt on our land, as well as our annual payments. Right now, we've ended 2021 and this unaudited about 1.49 or 1.5 million in reserve balance in our land bank fund. Mayor Benaj asked me to work with Ty and kind of put together a projected sales report for 2022, and that's underneath there. And if everything goes right by July, August, we should have another 3.2 million in land sales revenues, which adds up to 4.8 million, which at that time we have some options we can pursue. I did ask our Adam Pope, our financial advisor, to kind of run some numbers, and if we prepaid all of that $5 million, we'd save about $100,000 a year and annual debt savings, and shorten the entire life of the bond by about 5 years. So that's an option. There's other options out there. The Fed is signaling they're raising interest rates. So that we refinanced our land debt to be about 2%, so that gets in play of could we earn at least 2% on this money? Yeah, we have a lot of options. I don't want to complicate it. That could be a separate workshop, but right now it's all signals are good as far as savings go. But that decision, I would have to give notice to the bondholders 30 days before our November payment. So we do have some time on that. But that's kind of the timeline. If you're thinking long term, is the November payment is when we would want to retire that debt, if that was our option. And then the last fund I had on here is the bond and interest fund. Really, it's money coming in and paying debt service with, but I always want to include it because that is on our budget. And you might notice a ending balance in our bond and interest fund. A vast majority of that is prepaid special assessments. So don't think that money is all ours. A lot of it is when someone prepays a special assessment, I collect that money and then I use it to retire the bond payment as it goes forward. So that's what that is sitting there for. Try to get through pretty quick. We'll start our budget season probably April to May. Probably May, I'll come to you with our 5-year forecast updated, and I'm already starting it with some of this other stuff. But again, the big thing is looking at the end of the year report, how many permits we issued. My forecast usually says we're going to experience around 4 to 5% growth. We've experienced 10%, 7% growth the last 2 years, and it doesn't seem like it's going to nosedive. So that puts a lot of other things in play. And, I think Ty will help us out with that too. But, if we need to start looking at what big projects we have on board and including those in some of our 5 to 10 year projects, and how are we going to grow responsibly is also an important financial decision that we have to make as we do grow. So I'm here for questions, I'm sure, and I'm available at any time, but that's the summary I put together for tonight.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the information. That's very good. Sounds like we had a really good year in 2021 again, and that's very impressive. One of the reasons I asked Mr. Henry to put together this projected land sales issues, I think sometimes we lose sight of this stuff, and I don't want us to lose sight of it, because what he just told us is that we're going to see about $5 million that is available for either debt repayment or infrastructure. And we know there are some significant projects along the line that are coming up that we need to certainly consider. 53rd Street is one that comes to mind. Maybe something needs to be done in the Aurora Park area comes to mind. Those could be, and I'm not saying the city is going to pay for paving of Aurora Park. So I know some citizens were concerned about that, and I'm not advocating for that. But we do know that there has been that area has not been well maintained for drainage, and we do need to consider what are we going to do about the roads and streets. And I'm not asking us to solve that tonight. I just wanted the visibility of the money, where and how much of it is out there. And then as we get into some of the details, we can say, okay, maybe we could target some of this money for this project or some of that money for that project as we see time go on. So,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
I think that was really helpful, especially just connecting with that almost kind of, it looked like it was almost $1 million, 900 and some thousand that we ended up with in last year's budget due to the various under projections from revenue and over projections from expenses. That's great that we have, that capital available. Could certainly even help with things that we talked about earlier in our special meeting tonight on, costs that have gone up with Woodlawn and other infrastructure costs. We'll have options to use that capital to cover some of it instead of, increasing the debt if we want to do that, which I think we should certainly consider.
And Mayor, if I might add, one thing that's hard when we go through this huge expansion the last 2 years of selling a lot of land, it makes budgeting a little more unpredictable for me and for you guys, because we're selling off a land that's tied to special assessments, which equals savings plus revenue. So I will caution, I don't want us to get used to this type of treatment. It will zero down and narrow down, and we'll become very less. I just don't want to get used to this type of feeling. But
next year you're going to find us an extra $2 million, right?
Yeah. Don't.
Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think it's great. It's either you're getting better at these reports or I'm getting better at understanding them. I'm not sure which one is. Probably more me than you. I wasn't as good as understanding, but you did a great job, Ted. Appreciated it. I think you really was able to follow it very clearly. So thank you. And as we have a good year, I think the council has in the future thought about one-time purchases that don't bring on a whole bunch of things that we can't undo. The get ourselves tied into things that we can't handle over the long term. So hopefully we'll be able to manage a good year in a wise way, that a good year doesn't make us actually put us. Sometimes you have a good year and you get overzealous and it actually ends up worse for you in the long run. So hopefully we'll be able to manage that well. But Ted, great job. Thank you.
Ted, I saw one thing in here that concerned me, and maybe you have a good explanation. Why did the delinquent specials go up so much?
I don't know what we can say or not, but we had a developer turn over their remaining lots to an HOA, and we noticed that they were behind on some specials, so we forced their hand at paying those specials. And that would be the one that I can remember.
Okay, so it's one big group. It concerned me if there were a lot of people that weren't
No.
paying their specials, that maybe
No, a lot of
a
lot of time,
things to come.
a developer with say 7 empty lots will hold off on paying some of that stuff, and then when they need something from us, we'll take a look and force their hand to pay those off, and that's kind of where that larger chunk went. I never budget for that type of delinquent special reception.
So I'm hearing it's probably going to clear up this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Henry? Thank you for all the information. I know you do a lot of work to get this stuff together. Thanks.
Mayor, I guess I'm next.
I think you're next.
Just to follow up with Ted, we want to give you that information so you can see what's out there that we're going to be looking at. And at your next workshop. Oh, yep, there we go. So at the next workshop, we're going to be bringing you some recommendations of projects that can spend down some of those reserves, utilize some of that extra income that we've had, streets, utility projects, capital equipment, things like that. So your next workshop, all that money that Ted was able to produce for us, you'll get to look at how we spend, how much we spend, what do we spend it on. So that's what we wanted to cover tonight, just to give you an idea so you can be thinking about some projects and how much you have to spend. So the other thing I want to talk about is I've got a situation that I need to spend some money. And as Ted discussed, we're growing. No question about it. You know, the mayor mentioned that we have 11 active developments going on. In 2021, we had 178 residential housing units built, $35 million in valuation. We got 2 spec buildings in Sunflower Commerce under construction. We've got our population increased 22% in the last census. So from 2010 to 2022 or 2020, we're up to 8,000 residents. So we know we're growing, and we're seeing that in our budget, which is great. We talk a lot about efficiency and effectiveness. Those are the key words that government likes to use, and I know you all do too. So what is efficiency? Efficiency is the quality of being able to do tasks successfully without wasting time or energy. And I think you would all agree, and I would argue that we do that. These are our department heads, and you can see by their title, Recreation Senior Director, Director of HR and Communication, Finance and IT, City Manager, Economic Development, Land Sales, City Engineer, Planning, Zoning, Public Works. So all of our department heads do have several responsibilities under them. So what's effectiveness? Effectiveness is refers to the quality of which task or process is carried out that ultimately leads to higher overall business performance. And this is where I think we're lacking now because of all the growth that we're seeing and the fact that the staff is wearing many different hats. We've lost our effectiveness in one specific area, and that's planning and zoning. And the thing that bothers me or concerns me about that is planning and zoning is what creates all those revenues for us, is all that growth, all those new houses, all those new developments all falls under this planning and zoning. So we're efficient in that we don't have one person handling all that, but we have 3 people doing it, which is Jackie, Ann, and Keith. All have pieces that they try to work and keep our planning and zoning afloat. The problem is that we've got 11 subdivisions that require 11 different zoning cases. We're dealing with several engineers, a number of developers. It's not just plat review, but Ann has to review the water, sewer, stormwater, all those infrastructure of each of those. It's now taking us 3 months on average to get through the planning and zoning process, and it used to take us 1 to 2 months. Jackie, Keith, and Ann have numerous other responsibilities. And so planning and zoning is suffering. And I've seen it because I've heard complaints from citizens and developers and engineers that we're dropping the ball. And you haven't heard that, but I've heard it, and that's a concern that I have. Planning and zoning has to be done right, or it's open for litigation. We heard that Park City got sued because of a zoning issue up there. And I'm not saying why or anything about that, but zoning can be an issue where litigation can come about. Ann has other responsibilities as city engineer. She was here today talking about all the issues with Woodlawn she deals with. We've got WAMPO projects. I'm going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about grants. We got street projects. There was a list of streets that she's been working on, and of course we've lost a little efficiency there because 47th Street didn't get done until this year because she didn't have time to get all that and all the other projects done, as well as 11 different subdivisions that are going on and such. Keith has other jobs. He's our building inspector. He issues permits. He does plat reviews. He does reports. He handles our sidewalks. He's our city hall maintenance guy. So he has a lot of things. And of course, Jackie has a lot of other roles as city attorney as well. So I asked Keith, I said, Keith, if you go through your job description, tell me everything that is your responsibility. And if you were to do it right, and if you were to do it effectively, how many hours do you need a week? And so he averaged it out. You can see all the different jobs or responsibilities he has. It would take him 65 hours to handle all of those and doing them very effectively. And of course, I don't know, there's probably 20 different things he would do. And not that he does that every week, but that's an average. He may do something one week and not the other. So if we look at, we're paying him for 40 hours. He's got 65 hours of work that he really could be doing. So he's 3 days short per week to get the responsibilities and roles that he's got to do. So I asked Ann to do the same thing. So again, you can see the list of all the things she works on. There's council reports, there's miscellaneous projects, WAMPO meetings, UAC meetings. In your packet is detailed all the responsibilities and hours they have to put in. That comes to 72.5 hours for her if she was going to do all of these things and ensure that they were done properly and accurately. So we're paying her 40 hours a week. So she's 4 days short of getting everything done. So my dilemma is we want to be efficient, we want to be effective, and we want to have good customer service. The other side of it is that I have concerns that I've got employees that are going to have burnout. I've got customer complaints, poor performance, we're dropping the ball, which could lead to slowing our development process. So what do other cities do? So I looked at other cities similar to our size in the metro, and you can see all of these cities listed have a community development person. The only ones that don't are Park City and Bel Aire. And Park City is, when I gathered this information, they wanted to know what I was doing because they're looking at the position as well. You can see when we talk about efficiencies and staffing, if you look at the three that are most similar to us in size, which is Park City and Valley Center, we have 20% less staff than they do. So I think that's another argument that we're very efficient and have been very efficient on our staffing. So one option is to do nothing. The concern that I have is that we hope that we don't get sued because something on the zoning side gets dropped. We hope that we don't lose staff because they get burnt out or they find another job where they have less to do or make more money. And if that happens, who is going to fill in for them? And we know that the efficiencies that we have now, if we were to lose one of our staff members, the efficiencies would even drop more because Ann's been here 5 years and Keith's been here 20 years. So try to replace somebody brand new at what our staff is currently doing would be difficult. We're going to continue receiving complaints for taking longer through the process. We hope that home builders don't go to other cities because it's slow working here. We don't want our construction to slow, because if that slows, that reduces the amount of revenues that we're getting because of all the added taxes, the tap fees, everything that Ted had mentioned. We've got a developer-friendly reputation. We don't want that to go away. That's why we've been growing so much. And we have the opportunity, we lose the opportunity to do things better. You know, we talk about better communication and things that we want to do better, and we lose that if we continue operating the way we're operating. So option 2, which is my solution, is creating the position of community development director. So what's this position going to do? So you can see the estimated hours that and the responsibilities that I put that would be taking away from Keith and Ann, that this position would take over. So they're going to ensure that the zoning changes are reviewed properly, completed timely, and following our codes. They're going to work with developers to get the plats completed quickly, reviewed by legal, reviewed by engineering, and then meet the builder timelines. Zoning codes, review them and update them regularly. We haven't reviewed our zoning codes for, I think it was 5-6 years before Jackie got here that we did a zoning code review. Keep our annual comprehensive plan up to date. I don't think this council has seen our comprehensive plan or approved it. Have you? It's been a few years.
It's been a while.
It's not annually. We know that. So, you know, again, we're supposed to be doing that annually. Keep the public up to date on growth, development, infrastructure improvements. At our last council meeting, we had a citizen come in and say, why wasn't we notified of a lake that was being drained? That would be something I would see this person would do, working with the contractor, working with the developer, and noticing that, okay, they're going to drain the lake. Why don't we let the HOA know? And that would be a responsibility of this person. If we added this new position, taking away, covering from the extra hours that Ann and Keith have, we're still 17.45 hours short. So, and then I see them being the liaison between the planning commission, developers, public staff, governing body. They're going to ensure that all applications, zoning, development permits are completed accurately, timely. You know, the question is this a long-term position? I don't see how our growth would slow for at least 5 to 10 years, because you think about all the land that we've sold that to people that want to develop and are going to start developing, because that was part of the idea, was to sell it to people that were going to develop and not sit on the land. If you read in the Business Journal today, they were talking about Greenwich, where the Top Golf is going in. The developer said that Greenwich is going to become the next Maze Road, and development's going to take off between where Top Golf is at, Greenwich Place, all the way up to 254. Everything to we're actually on the east and west side. As you get up between 45th and 53rd, Bel Aire is, city limits are. So we've got developers taking notice of growing. And then if the economy does slow for whatever reason, this position will improve the process, improve communication, and serve as a backup to Keith. Which again, like I said, if something happens to Keith, we don't have anybody. So basically, that's the funding is there. Ted identified that we have plenty of money to cover a position like this. I think it's going to increase our effectiveness. And really all the council would have to do would be update our pay plan to include that position.
So one of the things that when I looked at staffing, as I managed different organizations and such, is I never wanted to add a position if I didn't see more than 2 years in that position. I usually looked at a 5-year. If I didn't see 5 years, I wouldn't add a position because otherwise you hire somebody that's only going to last 2 years, you're going to end up laying them off. That's not fair to them, and it's not fair to the organization. It's just a bad way to deal with personnel. So I've always avoided that. I've had that discussion with my CEO at one company one or two times, and told them, no, don't hire that position because you'll turn around and lay them off in 6 months, and that's not right. So anyway, I appreciate this overview that you've given us, because I think all of us recognize that there's been a lot of pressure to get a lot of things done, because there's a lot going on. So, but I will let council ask any questions they may have.
Didn't we get somebody to help Ann out? Part-time position or contract something?
So we did budget some money for engineering, contractual engineering, to help on the engineering side. My thought is, I think that's what we'll look at for 2023, because the reorganization that I'm looking at is that Ann would become city engineer only. The person that's the assistant public works director does a good job, been with the city for over 20 years, does a great job. But he takes some of Ann's time. And so I've talked to him and I said, if you didn't, could you make a lot of decisions without Ann? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, then what if you were public works director and you reported to me? And he said, okay, I would be fine with that. He said, I still need Ann, because a lot of road stuff that we do, I need an engineer. And I said, yep, got that. And then the planning and zoning piece would then go to this position. So really Ann would be our city engineer and just do engineering. Now, my thought is, can we reduce some of that outsourcing of engineering that she's been doing, because she's been trying to do all these other things? That would be a goal. But again, it just depends on how many developments that she's reviewing, how many development plans and engineering plans she's reviewing. So, but yeah, that's what it is, contract engineering.
So just a quick question, and I'll go to Mr. Smith. Did you, and I don't remember the detail here, but was this person going to do like project management as well, to make sure that projects are moving along as anticipated?
So that's exactly what, and I didn't want to call it project manager, because everybody's called project manager. That's exactly what it is. My goal is that a developer comes in and says, or an engineer calls and says, we've got XYZ developer who wants to develop this parcel. And this person would say, okay, come meet with me, show me the plat, and then start working with that developer and that engineer. And then the part that needs to be reviewed by the engineer would go to Ann and say, Ann, need you to review these things in this plat. I need it back by a certain day, because it's got to be on the planning commission by this date. And then would then go to Jackie and say, Jackie, can you review this plat language for whatever? I'm working on the development agreement. Can you review these things? And then I need this back, so it'll be on this planning commission. They'd get that back, then work with the planning commission, the developer, to get it on the quickest date. And then after that, of course, it goes to the city council. So then they would be responsible for basically the staff person for the planning commission, make sure everything is getting done through them. A lot of times in zoning requests or rezones, there's publications we have to do. So if we're going to hit a certain planning commission date, it's got to be published on a certain date. And that's been some of our problems. It hasn't, our notifications weren't published at the right time, so it pushes us back. So that's exactly right. Walks through the whole process of that plat until you see it, and then you finally approve it, and then they would file it. And then that piece of the project's done.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Smith.
Well, you happened to ask a question that was on my mind a little bit differently, because as a council member, I see the staffing issue that you're talking about, where some balls get dropped and things don't get progressed as quickly as we would like them to as a city, just due to time limitations. And I think the theme that I've seen that show up in is a lack of dedicated capability to that project coordination. And somebody to just really own and champion driving forward the priority initiatives of the city, whether that be, priority developments that we're working with developers on, or engineering projects where we just need to be calling the people that we've hired to do the work and just bugging them to move the project forward. And so the need that I see from where I sit, and I like the list that you put together, is really on that capability of dedicated project coordination capability, looking for somebody that can really drive initiatives forward. I like the comments on, thinking about how long this is going to be a need, because that's something that was on my mind. We've sold a lot of land here in Bel Aire. There's a lot of development happening. Once that's full, what happens next? I don't know. Do we go annex more land as a city and the growth continues, or do things slow down and then you have somebody in a role that doesn't really have, work to go do? That's not a good position for somebody looking for a long-term career opportunity for. But I think the time horizon on that is more than 5 years. And so I think it may make sense to do something here. The only other thought or maybe concern that I had was, just looking at the kind of list of things that this person might do as community development director, which I'm not in love with that title, but I guess it doesn't matter. There's lots of very specific tasks that are going to take very small slices of time. And have you thought at all about, is a person going to be able to be effective splitting their time across that many departments or across that many disparate types of tasks? And what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so you're right, and that's part of what we do is try to make sure we want everybody to be busy and have plenty of projects. But part of my goal, because that position will report to me, is to make sure that I have a specified list of priorities. That it's the zoning piece, it's the platting piece, maybe the comprehensive plan like it's been done in the past is not what we have to get done. The zoning, we got to get done. We've talked about needing to update that. Staff has got some ideas that need to be done. So I think part of my project management for this person is to identify the priorities that I have and you have and make sure those are getting done first. And then if there is time to some of these ancillary issues, then they have that. But I don't want to be in a situation where I hire someone and then say, oh, well, I need you to do these things. Well, that wasn't in the job description. So I try to make it so that, hey, there's a lot of stuff in there you maybe don't.
There always has to be that and other things that's assigned.
Yep. So, yeah. And Justin, to your point, that's the thought with Ann just being an engineer is so that she can work on these street projects and stuff and not have to be questioned about where am I at on this plat and where's the zoning at on this and do I have my report done for the zoning board? So that's exactly.
No, and I like that thought. As I looked at the sample job description, maybe even calling out some more skills around that project coordination might be effective in drawing in some additional candidates that could be really interesting there.
So what's your vision for things like the rebuild of 47th Street? Obviously, that doesn't need to be platted. It doesn't need review by our city attorney for legal description or anything like that. It just, you already know what the street looks like. You just got to go rebuild it. So what's your vision for who takes charge of that? Is this person take charge of that as well?
No, I see that as an engineering an and deal.
Because there's still project management to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But my goal is, if we take away 20 extra hours or 20 of those hours, if she doesn't get called by the public works director 2 or 3 hours a week, if she doesn't have to work on planning and zoning stuff 2 or 3 hours, hopefully that gives her 4 or 5 hours that she was working on other projects that she can focus on 47th Street and some of those other things. I call her about, hey, when we're going to talk about some grants, estimates for possible road improvements. And she's going to have a whole list for you to think about road improvements. And that takes time to put that stuff together and those things and those dollar amounts. So that's why my thought was, let's just have her be our engineer and just do engineering. And then this other stuff, we'll have other people handle.
Well, I'll kind of give you my thoughts. I hate growing staff because I hate anything that is an ongoing expense. So, right, ongoing expenses you always don't want to add. But the city's growing, so obviously, just even just simply like at some point, Keith has to drive to someone's house to do an inspection. If there's 20% more houses to drive to, and they get progressively further away, I mean, at some point, another staff member has to be done. I mean, that's just pretty simple math. But some other thoughts I have on this. It doesn't seem like our current problem is we have a skills issue. We have the people that have the knowledge and have the skills to do it. They just don't have enough time to get it all done. So because they don't have time to get it all done, things aren't getting done as well as they should. So what we are trying to get is more of those skills that we already have extended. So the way it looks like we're trying to hire this is hiring someone that already has all those skills. So we're hiring at a pretty, the pay scale is pretty far up there. We're saying we're going to hire someone that's already has all these skills, and then so on and so forth, and they're going to go on. And you have more experience than me, so I don't want to say I'm right. I just want us to think about this. That's a way to do it. It's going to be hard to get that person, because you're going to have to pay them so much that if they have to move towns or move their family, you have to pay them so much that they're willing to move, or you're going to get them because they have experience and the other person didn't want them. There's some serious, and they also might have a certain way they like to do it that they've done it in the past. That is not how we do it, and that might be difficult. And if they're further on in their career, which is why they're worth, getting a good pay scale, are they going to be hyped up on going all digital, which is what we should be going for? So another way to do it is you hire someone earlier on in their career. So we have a lot of great staff in very high positions at our city now that we got earlier in their career. And I think they've been able to grow with us, and we've been able to compensate them financially based on how well they're doing. And we're super glad to have them. And because they are started earlier in their career, they were also more amenable to changing and doing it differently. And they had fresh eyes and, some of the digital things we've done. So a consideration when thinking about this position is, should we hire someone that already knows how to do it, or should we hire someone that we can train? And if they're no good, we can get rid of and get the next person earlier in their career. And if they're very good, they may be the next great Bel Aire employee over a very, very long time. And we've been very happy to have some of those that are still with us today, because that's how I would kind of think about it. Because we don't need to hire someone that already knows how to do it. We're not like, oh man, we don't know how to do this. We need to get someone in here to teach us how to do it. We got to pay whatever it takes to get that person. We already technically know how to do it. We just don't have time to do it. And I realize a person that wouldn't be super experienced would slow you down in the first 4 months, right? They might be like a net negative in the first months because they don't know what they're doing. But over time, they might become your next great employee. And the person that already has all the experience, that you're going to have to pay them through the nose, or there might be a reason they're available at that thing. So anyway, that's sort of my long explanation of how I'm thinking through it.
So everything you said is exactly right. Ted and I have talked about that, because Ted does a lot of hiring downs. He's involved with a lot of hiring, and we were talking about, okay, how difficult is this position and things. Ted and I both agree that Wichita State has some of the best Master of Public Administration staff that comes out. Right, Ted? They got probably the best. I think. I don't know that KU's got a plan. They're not as good as Wichita State. So there's MPA students come out of Wichita that they have to take classes in zoning and planning and stuff. So we're not going to just say you have to have this experience, because you're right. There may be somebody out of WSU and MPA that's really excited, wants to do something for their career, and maybe that there's somebody young like that that's really ambitious. We don't have to spend a lot of time. We do some training, but they're a great employee that's really a go-getter. We don't want to say, oh, you don't have the experience. So I think in there I put something about education versus experience, that kind of stuff in the job description. So you're right. In this market, I don't think we want to throw out anybody.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith, just let me make one quick comment about that. In my experience, you put a job description out there, and you're lucky if you get somebody that fills 25, 30% of that description. Okay. Beyond that, you just have to say, okay, who's the right fit. So, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, the more that I'm hearing, the more this is really focused on planning and zoning. And there's a lot of planning and zoning work because there's a lot of development work. There's a lot of permits. There's a lot of inspections. There's a lot of plating. I don't think that we have a great technology system in place in planning and zoning right now that enables builders to do self-service, that enables citizens to do self-service. You can't go online and request your permit and pay for your permit and get it approved and upload pictures if that's how you're going to get your inspection approved. Have we thought about how much of this demand could be reduced by investing in a permanent, really amazing technology solution for planning and zoning?
So actually, we think the answer to that is this position, because we do have the software there. The problem to do all that you said, the software that we've got is to do that. The problem is rolling it out and getting Keith the time to do it and Mary the time to do it, because they're busy filling out the applications and stuff. So we have the software, we just haven't implemented it yet, or a few pieces of it. And that's the other thing that I think this position can get us up and running on, that because the goal of our software is to exactly do that. Have it so that a builder can email in and say, yep, have my inspections been done? Looks on there, yep, they have been done.
So is that something where we could, do we need to hire an employee to do that? Or can we have somebody come in and get that rolling for us and see how that impacts our workflow? I'm wondering, if that's in place, if that's implemented, if we're really leveraging technology and automation there, does that change the demand for this position or the skills that we would want this person to have? Would we hire for it differently?
If I might add, Keith's been headlining the project. I know everybody's thinking that there's some sort of billion-dollar company behind planning and zoning permitting that's making you open your I'm trying to think of a PayPal, and you say, oh, look how easy it is just to pay this company with PayPal. But there's a lot that goes into that. I would say we've worked, we picked one of the better companies that's worked with a lot of other cities, and it's still pretty primitive. Even you would say, okay, this doesn't do. I know we all think it's going to do everything for us, but I think even with all these software upgrades in place, we're still going to need a lot of help. One, with the whole nature of, and I hear and from my office, all the contractors that come in, are they going to open their, a lot of them have flip phones still. They have to use the technology. It's going to take years and years of training the contractor to use it. We're on the staff side are really pushing forward to upgrading and doing more of that online presence with planning and zoning, but I don't see that anywhere near taking the spot of the extra person needing. And we can discuss that in length with Keith. He knows about everything there is to know about that process and about planning and zoning, which he's probably next to Ty and me. No, he's a true expert, and having someone to absorb any of his knowledge would be amazing too.
And just kind of think about that, like, is implementing software solutions what Keith, I'm just imagining of all the things Keith's good at, saying, and you're also going to be good at implementing a software. So that is a big ask, right? Holy cow.
Well, along those lines, and I think I've said it before, I really think any software application that we've purchased, we need to take full advantage of and move full speed ahead with them. I've seen it way too many times, and I continue to see it every day when I audit or do consulting, that companies just are not doing that stuff. And it's like, why'd you spend that money if you're not going to do it? Okay. So please do everything you can to get software implemented. So
and like
it's helping us.
Ted was saying, Justin, to your thought. So we look up here what Keith does. So inspections, plan approval, building maintenance, permit approval, reviews, correspondence, which is emails, phone calls, plan approval, stormwater, floodplain, walk-in meetings with individuals. That software isn't going to cover any of these. So there's certainly some efficiencies there, no question about it. And there's, benefits to the public to be able to go in and see those things, no question about it. And like Ted was saying, the thought is with this new person, we can get that stuff and really start utilizing it more than what we're doing now.
And the vision I would have, the dream scenario would be someone that not only learns from Keith, because Keith is one of the most knowledgeable staff members we have here, but also pushes Keith and you and whoever else in the technology space, because those two things are always in tension, right? You're always innovating, and you always need the people that know what they're doing, because sometimes the innovators have absolutely no idea what they're doing. So, you got to keep those things in tension all the time.
So do we need a consensus here, or just do we need to put something on agenda for next city council meeting?
Yeah. So if council's comfortable, looking at the pay plan that adds that position, then we could add it to the next agenda.
Yeah. Do we know like what you're projecting the budget impact to be for that role?
Yes. So we were budgeting about 90,000, and that's salary, benefits, capers, that's the total package. It's not, the salary's not going to be 90, but we're thinking probably in the 60, 70 range for salary, and then the rest are benefits, capers, those types of things.
So
Okay.
I'm good with hiring one person. I'm not sure we don't need two.
well, it's baby steps, right?
Yeah, don't want to overload your training new people.
Yeah, what I'm thinking about is that I think the help is needed. Everything we do, we have to prioritize, and so we had quite a bit of growth in salaries last year, which increased our budget for employee compensation quite a bit, and so I do want to be mindful of just kind of year over year growth there, so that doesn't get out of hand, because it could get out of hand quickly. And as we all know, we have a lot of infrastructure projects we've got to dedicate money to, but we can't get to those infrastructure projects if we don't have staff to advance them forward. So I guess the outstanding question that I have is in terms of prioritization. Should we prioritize hiring this position now, or would we be more advantaged to take some of those funds and execute on like some of the software strategic initiatives to get software implemented by somebody that has expertise there, capture those efficiencies, and then 6 months, a year from now, hire for the position, not spending those funds in a contracted way?
Yeah, I don't want to put words in city manager's mouth about this, but I think it's almost getting to be the chicken and the egg. What do I spend my time on? Okay. Do I spend my time on implementing software? Or I spend my time on getting this license out and getting this approval done, and I think that's the decisions that are being made day to day, is that, one of the things I've explained before is that you do that 4-square analysis of priority and urgency. Okay. And I don't know how many of you have seen that 4-square analysis, but things can be very low priority, but very urgent. Okay. The phone's ringing. It has to be, your sister wanting to talk about, the party next week. That's not very urgent, but it's taking time away from what might be urgent and might be very important too. Okay. But the phone rang. So that took you away. Anyway, so to me, I think that's kind of the dilemma we're seeing, is that our staff is trying to take care of the urgent and not really getting to these kind of priorities that we really want to foster and want to do.
Yeah, and I certainly don't have all the information there, but I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. I think in my mind it's a question of timing, and not should we augment staff capability. It's what is the right way to augment staff
Yeah.
the most effectively. And
Mhm.
should we first augment staff with third-party contract resources that have special expertise in helping us get some projects done, and then do full-time employee staff augmentation? Or should we just go straight to full-time employee staff augmentation for planning and zoning and hope that they do, great with some of these specific, strategic projects that we want to get done?
Because what would be a real shame is if we hire another person and the software still never gets implemented because they still do it the same way it's currently being done, because the people that do it that way, that's the way it's done. That would be a mistake. That would be, because if you say, well, we're going to hire that person 3 months later and we're going to spend that money on, or maybe even a little bit more on implementing that software. And I think that's what you're saying, right? Like that would be a shame to hire another person and then still not get these other things implemented, even though we do need another person. We want all, both those things to happen. I mean, I can understand another person. At some point, Keith and Ann have to drive to the places, and there's more of those places, and they're getting further away. So, I mean, at some point, another person, and that's massively oversimplified, I know, but anyway, I
So
can see what you're saying.
Maybe just an idea of a solution to that is that one of the first priorities is this person has is that they need to get the software implemented within a year. I don't know what, I'm just throwing something out.
Because the struggle I have is, so we don't bring on this person for 3 months or 6 months, but we go back to Keith and Ann and say, you guys need to get this, all these programs working, and we want it done in 3 months. So what are they going to stop? They've already dropped the ball on a lot of things. So what are they going to drop the ball on next? So instead of next workshop, we're talking about streets. Let's talk about streets in August. Because she doesn't have time to put all the street work together for you. She's got to get these programs working. And I'm kind of being facetious here, but I mean, that's my concern is somebody's got to head that up, and we already know how many hours that they don't have to do. And now I'm going to say, you go do this, drop whatever else. I know you're 3 days short anyway, but drop another 8 hours and get this done for me.
Yeah, and I'm simply just saying, think about all the different ways you can add capacity to your staff.
Yep.
Because it may take you 3 to 6 months to hire somebody, but you might be able to get a contractor in the door next week to help with some of the, immediate demand that you have. So just an idea I'm throwing out.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's possible that person might be hard to hire. It's also possible the contractor might have more relevant skills and it gets done quicker and better and faster. Maybe not. Maybe you actually just need the employee to do it so they understand. Well, I guess that's something that you get to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I follow what you're saying.
Okay.
Well, and it may be that way anyway, because even if at the next meeting you approve the position, it's going to take, we got to advertise, we got to do interviews. It's going to be 3 months down the road before they start.
Typically.
So maybe that 3 months we get a hold of, and say, hey, can you help us get us farther along so we get this new person, they can hit the ground running with software.
Okay.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you, Mayor.
Thank you. So next item is policies, tobacco-free parks. And we had a presentation last city council meeting. And I don't really have a feel of what council members thought about that, if they think we need to do something. But I think Ty and I talked earlier today. Did you get any response about what if we have any issues in parks today?
I'm going to be honest with you, Mayor. I didn't, and because of the different things that I do, I didn't get the email sent.
Oh, okay. I see.
Just one
So-
thing after that.
Yeah.
And the mayor asked, from staffing, what's the concerns about in implementing this? And one of the things I did here was who would enforce it. So if it's no smoking in any parks, and a police officer or a parks employee that's out mowing sees someone smoking, are they supposed to go up and say, you can't smoke here? And so that was the one concern I had from our staff. The other was that they didn't really parks didn't like the idea of a designated area, because then that's where all the butts go. And then they have to go clean out the, whatever kind of piece of equipment we put your cigarettes out or whatever, and that kind of stuff. But the mayor had asked about, is it a problem? Do we have butts all over in our areas? And I was going to ask, and I apologize. Mayor.
Just let you know what prompted that is that in I can't remember the lady's name, but Shelley. In her presentation to the Sedgwick County Association of Cities, she had actually showed a situation that they had in Wesley Hospital. Actually, there's a park across the street from Wesley Hospital and that Ascension clinic there. And what the workers would do is they would take their breaks and go into that park to smoke. And the park was filled with cigarette butts all over the ground. I mean, it was a mess. It was really bad. So that was one of the things that prompted Wichita to do something about that issue. I don't know that we have that issue, and I don't know. I just don't have enough information about it to say, is this something that we're concerned about? But I just want to get a feel from the council if there's any concern here or not.
Yeah, I'd like to know how much trash they're generating too. Maybe if we just put up a sign that said no smoking in Bel Aire parks at the entrances, it would take care of most of it. There's always going to be somebody that's going to smoke, even right there standing beside the no smoking sign, because we got belligerent people like that in our culture.
Oh, I've seen worse. I had them do it right next to an oxygen generator. It's
That's
like, oh my
stupid,
gosh. Okay,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
I was just saying, on first thought, I thought, oh, that's a really good idea. And then I started thinking about the details of enforcing it, and I thought that sounds messy. And then I thought, well, the folks that happen to smoke, they're taxpayers and want to enjoy the park also. And so do we really want to make sure that, they can enjoy the park in that way? The littering, the throwing of the cigarette butts on the ground, in my mind, is the main problem or potential problem that I don't actually even know if we have. I don't know if that's technically considered litter, but I bet it is. And we probably already have, something to enforce that. And so maybe just some signage around, hey, cigarette butts are litter, no littering, would be effective if we did have an issue like that in our parks.
Unless there's a problem, I don't want to fix it. So even the sign that says don't do stuff, I even try to avoid putting those up because it's just like a less welcoming atmosphere. So there's not actually a problem. Then let's not add, don't do this and don't do that. Now, if there's a problem and we need to enforce it, let's address it. But if there's not, I wouldn't even go put up a bunch of signs. It just kind of makes you seem less unfriendly, even though probably everyone kind of agrees it's not a great idea to throw, cigarette butts on the ground.
So let's just give us some time to learn if there is a problem here that we even need to solve. Okay.
Sounds
Before
good.
we
Sounds like
Going
you're
further
looking
there.
at the range of things, and an ordinance may not be the most practical solution for the current problem.
And, of all the problems that we're looking at, there's a lot of things to address. That one maybe nobody's complained to me about it as a council member. Even going door to door, that wasn't a priority, and so I'm not sure it would warrant
Right.
a lot of focus.
Okay. Thank you. I want to move along because this next item we really need to talk about tonight. It's because there's a time constraint on this, and we need to get this thing at least hashed out. And I apologize, it's 9:30 already.
Do you have a feel for how long the topic is?
I don't know. Do you have a feel for how long this
I'm
is?
wondering if a break is warranted.
15 minutes.
It'll take you 15 minutes.
Can we
Okay.
take a 5-minute break?
Let's take a 5-minute break and we'll come back to this. Okay. But we do need to cover this tonight. I think we're ready to get started. So I went to a WAMPO meeting earlier today, and there is a lot of money out there that will require matching funds. So there's a lot to be learned about all that stuff. What Mr. Lasher is going to talk about tonight is one of those that we actually know what they're doing, but there's a lot of more stuff coming down the pike. So it's something that we need to keep in the back of our minds as we look at opportunities for infrastructure and projects. So, okay.
Yes. So the mayor's right. There's, everybody's getting this ARPA federal money, and the state's getting it. Feds, they've got a lot of money that they've got to give out for projects. And so we keep getting emails of there's this grant, this grant, this grant. And some of them that we think we'd have a good shot at getting, but they're not cheap, and we have to match them. And it could be, for one project, could be $1 million or $2 million match, but we could get a $4 or $5 million project. So, and they're all based on time frames. So there's a Build or Tiger grant that's out right now. It's U.S. Department of Transportation is doing that. The deadline's April 14th to have your application in. This is not something that we're going to apply for because it's a major regional impact. And for example, it's a nationwide, and Wichita got this for the North Junction. So that's the type of that's who you're up against.
Maybe they could use 254 on that one.
Yeah. Now the base grant is coming from the state of Kansas. So this is one that we think that we have a good opportunity to get. And basically they're wanting to see economic development, and specifically around industrial and business parks. And what they want to see is infrastructure improvements to make the parcels shovel ready. And we can do that. We can tell the story. We've got an industrial park. We've had Solo Cup come in and try to get 100 acres there. We had, what's the Love Box? Pratt Industries came in, tried to get 100 acres there. So we can tell a good story that there's interest in our industrial park. And in fact, it was in the Business Journal. They were talking about this. You've heard this, the state's doing some kind of secret legislative stuff because there's somebody who's wanting 100 acres just for the building itself.
It's a $4 billion project. It will be 3 million square feet of building. So it'll take 75 acres just for the building itself. So don't know where that's going to go.
Yeah, but the great thing is that it was a Wichita Business Journal, and they were talking to the Wichita, what is the economic development group here, Greater Wichita Partnership, and they said, well, where would this size of place go? And they said, well, Bel Aire's got a Sunflower Commerce Park. So we're getting recognition of our park, but we do need some infrastructure out there. And so the deadline for that is February 28th. That's before our next workshop. So, and then of course, as the mayor said, WAMPO's getting funds. What we'd like to see is 45th Street in 2026. So what I'm looking for from you all is are these important enough that you want us to spend the time to apply for these grants, knowing that we may come back to you and say we need $1 million or $2 million match if we get it. So for example, 45th Street, our goal is it's an 80-20. Our goal would be to have it approved in the TIP this year or next year. And again, that's just approval that it's getting funded. We do the design engineering in 2023, 24. We'd have to do right-of-way acquisition and bidding in 25. Construction would start in 2026. We learned on Woodlawn, it takes a long time to get to that construction point. So we want to be ahead. We want to get all the engineering, right-of-way acquisition done before it's ready to build. So we're just got some pretty strong rough numbers that the design engineering, $650,000. That's 100% Bel Aire. We have to pay that just like we did on Woodlawn. Construction inspection, we're looking at about $800,000. That's what Woodlawn costs us. Again, that's split though, and then about $7 million construction, and that would be for a 3-lane. That would be reconfiguring the intersection at Oliver and 45th Street. 45th and Woodlawn will already be done. So for our cost, we're looking at the design, engineering, construction, our share of that about 2.2 million or 180,000 for 15 years. So if you want us to work on putting this into the tip for 2026, probably 2026, 2027, well, we do a temp note and stuff, but we're looking, 5 years, 10 years needing to take on that kind of money. Now, Ted and I feel comfortable we could do it. We're doing you saw his numbers. I think one argument that we would make would be, we talk about the reserves. If they're up around 50% and we have to pull in 180, you can do that. If we drop them to 30, you get a little bit, a little concerning there. Just, that's one option. The mayor said, we've got this, the revenue from the land. We could not do the principal payment and hold that and use that for our match. There's options out there. But again, it takes time and energy to do these things, and we don't want to do it and turn them down.
Do we know if we'll be able to use ARPA funds for these types of initiatives?
Yeah, we could.
What came to Bel Air, yes. I don't know if what's available at Sedgwick County would be available for this because they would have more restrictions on their funds. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know, Ted, though. I thought I heard something. You couldn't use it for matching. We'll have to look into that.
I was only asking about those funds that I know are coming to us, or I think
Right.
are coming to us, which you said is $10 million.
No, it's
No,
12
1 million.
1.2 million. 1.2 million.
10 million.
So
Where
we'll
was
have
the
to,
$10
so
million?
would that work on this? I thought I heard something that you couldn't use it for matching, but we'll have to look, we'll have to look into that.
But even if you couldn't match, you could move things around and help.
So
free
what
up
we
the
could do
budget.
is we could pay 650,000 to design and engineer it, and then we'd know exactly what our numbers are for the project. So yeah, we could pay for that.
I
And then
get a lot of
that reduces
citizens.
what you bought.
I get a lot of citizens concerned about 45th Street as the next issue.
Yeah, I
It's-
think you're exactly right.
I've had some citizens tell me that they think it should be a priority over 53rd because it's got a lot more traffic.
I've heard the same thing. I mean, 53rd's got like holes in it, so I understand why, whatever. But people care about 45th.
Yeah, and it's a major road. So again, we've got to start working on it this year to get it in the tip. This is the one. This base grant is the one that's more of a concern because we've got to have that in by February 28th, the application. So this is, and again, these are just hand drawings because that's what I had time to do. But over there, so here's phase one. All the utilities are there. We've got a water main that goes here. All of this is south of the railroad tracks, can be developed. But we need water there. And then this is up there on the north side.
Right?
Pardon?
This is the Sunflower Commerce Park.
Yes, Sunflower Commerce Park. So, we like to loop those. So we could do a water main that would really serve all that whole 800 acres over there. And again, it's going to have to be done for development. This is on the sewer side. So right now we have sewer here. We run into the topography that we need a lift station down here because it flows this way. The natural flow is this direction, but about at the railroad tracks, it flows to the south. So we have to have a lift station. We just, you guys just heard at our last meeting, a lift station is at least $1.9 million, 1.8. That was for the big one. Remember that would serve this 400 acres here. And then of course we need to tie it in to where our other mains are. So just a guesstimate, and we'll work on these numbers to get them closer, but just to give you an idea, about 2 million for the water mains, because you got 1, 2, 3, about 4 miles of water mains. And those are big ones. Those are going to be 16-inch. And then about 4 million for the lift station, guesstimating about 2 million. And then we got 1, 2, about 3 miles worth of mains that are going to be about an 8-inch. We're probably looking at about a $6 million project. Bel Aire be responsible for 20%. So that's about 1.2 million. If we borrowed it over 20 years, that's about 80,000. Now, the thing about this is to recoup some of that, we could create a benefit district so that when someone wants to develop in there, they would have to reimburse us for some of that cost. So we could potentially get it done for free using the state money and then the benefit fee. But like we do a lot of things, we have to put it in first and then carry it until it gets developed. So again, is this a project that you would feel comfortable? We feel like we have a good chance of getting it because of all the interest we've had, the location, the story we can tell, that they want wins, and this is going to be a win. As I said, Greenwich we know is growing. The idea is that this would be industrial. I mean, that's the goal, but if it's not industrial, it'll be housing. It'll be multifamily. It'll be a commercial. It will be something in the next 5 years. And the state wants to see wins. And so this is a great location to get a win. So we feel pretty comfortable we could get this grant.
Do we have anything on the time horizon that would tell us some development is somewhat imminent there if we go invest this money? I'm a little nervous about the play of spending money on infrastructure, hoping that people will come, build there. It feels like we've done that before on a larger scale. This would be a smaller scale, of course, and there's a lot of grant money to help out. So maybe that's a compelling reason to do that. But it does make me just a little bit nervous to pre-develop an area, hoping that it'll get some customers.
So I was
You're
concerned, I had the concern when we did the lift station out here at Webb, $500,000 at that time. Now they're at 1.6 million. I don't know how that happens, but okay. I had the same concern, but now you look at it, we sold all that land. Well, I think there's one parcel we haven't sold yet, but I don't know. Maybe we signed that contract. Did we sign that contract?
No, but that wasn't. What you're saying, basically what you're saying, Mayor, is that whole area that feeds that, or that lift station feeds, is going to be sold, and so someone else is going to be responsible for those special assessments.
So this is similar type of thing. The difference is we don't own a lot of this land. This land's already been purchased by investors.
There would be no customers for that infrastructure today, right?
Nope.
Which I think is a little bit different than some of the other.
Well, that lift station did have one customer. One of the Rock Springs developments needed that lift station.
Yeah, we had an imminent need to build something, and so we built it with growth in mind, which is different than we don't actually have somebody that needs it, but we're still building it with growth in mind. There's a subtle difference there in terms of, hey, we actually know we do have a need versus we're projecting a need here.
And also, the amount of, so there's risk, right? And then, so let's just pretend worst case scenario. We build it. No one builds on it for 10 years. Are we okay? Because if we're okay, then that risk is a little bit more worth it. If you build it and no one builds on it for 10 years and you go, we blasted our entire budget and, go look at that purchase we made, that's a different story, So kind of understanding those numbers on how much worst case scenario would destroy our budget or not is kind of a helpful way for me to think about it.
So, and you're right. I think so. All we need to be concerned about is carrying it, because once it's developed, then or starts development, then we'll do the benefit, and then we'll get reimbursed for it. So, can we carry 80,000 for 5 years or 10 years? I don't. Ted, can we?
If it's a priority of the council.
The political answer.
I mean, if you think like 80,000, right? We could just, get rid of one employee.
That's an FTE. That's what we were talking about earlier.
I'm not saying we would get one employee, but I'm just saying.
From a financial standpoint, reserves are great. They're not going to solve all our ills. It's going to be, as we grow, we're going to have to make prioritizing these types of issues over maybe other issues, such as we grow, we capture some of that growth, is what I'm saying, and use it towards more growth opportunities like these. And if we don't want to capture that growth, we're going to have to set that as a priority and adjust our our actions towards that.
I mean, there's definitely a big upside here on making this land usable for industrial use cases.
And
That
Whatever.
tax revenue would be huge for Bel Air if that ever
And
came
we're
to
getting,
fruition.
80% of it paid for.
right, that's the huge benefit, right? I mean, like,
Benefit. The other thing is, think about it. And I don't know if this is legitimate to do this, but you have 1.8, $1.2 million in ARPA funds right now that is unencumbered. Maybe this thing is free. I don't know.
That's kind of what Ted's talking about is, what do we want to spend today? What do we want to bond? So the question is, do we want to spend 1.25 or 1.2 ARPA funds today, or do we want to invest it and then recoup that money later on? Because we would get it back.
the return on the investment is so big here because they pay 8%, right? This deal isn't here 6 months from now, right? This option is not here 6 months from
This option goes away in a couple of weeks.
Right.
If that's how we were funding it, I think I would support it a lot more readily.
So
Well,
always.
Originally, when we talked about that ARPA money, we were going to use it to upgrade sewer and water lines.
Yeah. One time we did say.
Those still need to be done because we were talking earlier tonight about what happens when a line breaks unexpectedly. So if we do preventive maintenance, we can.
so what our thoughts were on that is we already budget. What do we budget? 400,000 a year.
$250,000 water, 300,000.
Okay, so we have that in the budget. So last year when we were talking about the ARPA funds, council wanted to spend a lot of that toward what we're dealing with 53rd Street. We got 45th Street improvements. So but we couldn't use it for streets at that point. So what Ted and I had worked up was we would use it for water. We'd take 600 in water, 600 in sewer, and then that 300 or 250 that we were going to spend, we were going to transfer that to the general fund, and then we could use that for streets. So technically, we were going to kind of move things around and spend about 300 or so doing it that way.
Bit of a horse trading.
Doesn't
right?
mean that you could say let's spend the 600 on water and sewer. But we do have some fun about 300 in one, 250 in another to do some improvements this year.
And the other thing, previously, we talked about the owner of that land being responsible for all the water and sewer upgrades through specials or however he wanted to pay for it, south and east of the railroad tracks. So are we giving him a great deal? It was all of a sudden we're paying for his sewers, whereas other people in the rest of the town had to pay for them by specials? Or are we going to create enough of a benefit district that when he puts something in there, he pays us back for our expenses?
So that's good. Those good questions. And I think the one argument which kind of gets back to our first discussion is how long is it going to take to develop that? Well, if we were to install it and not special assess, that land becomes pretty attractive to ABC developer because I can go buy this for so much thousand acre and there's no special assessments on it.
and that is the point of the grant. Is that correct? I mean, that's the point of why they're giving the grant is to be able to get these developments pushed along faster. And so that's like unfair to the other businesses, quote unquote unfair. But that was the Fed's choice. Whether we do it or someone else does it, that's sort of the point of what they're trying to do, right?
And the other piece is, and that's why they like the industrial, which this is all zoned industrial, is, if you're going to bring in an industrial user, they want free land, they want tax abatements, they want all that stuff. Well,
Get both.
pardon?
They don't get both.
Yeah, but they want it all, and they're going to ask for it all.
Yeah, they don't get both.
They want us to build
Hayesville
building
doesn't
too,
get
I know.
both.
So the argument is that, well, guess what? You don't get free land. You're going to have to buy it from this developer, but there's no special assessments, or there's no special assessments for the water and sewer mains. So that's kind of where the state's saying we want to use that to spur growth.
I think I kept saying the Fed's the state is what.
I'd be a lot more happy with that if we still own that land. The part of Bel Aire that's east of the proposed lines, will they benefit from that?
So
Or would we have to add additional lift stations and
we'll have to look at that because right over, you can see right in, this is Bel Aire. This is on the east side of Greenwich. And we'd have to look at, will any of this benefit or not? We were just kind of focusing on this because we know this is here. We'd have to look at, because you're right, it may or may not. It may drain this way or it may drain this way. We just have to look
I
at
think
that.
you're going to find it drains east is why I'm asking that
Yeah,
question.
it may very well.
Well, I would definitely go for the water lines. I'm less thrilled with the sewer, but I guess you kind of got to put both in.
If you don't do one, you got to do them both.
I don't know. There's a lot of open land there.
A lot of lagoons, huh?
A couple of trees and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So with this type of grant, is there a distinction between the design phase where we have to pay 100% of the design and the grant only covers the build like there is with WAMPO? Or is it 80-20 for the whole thing?
From what I've seen, it's whatever the project is what they split it. So we're going with, and we've been talking to PEC. They've got some staff that used to work at WAMPO that really have some knowledge on this stuff. But they were saying that, they felt that it was the cost of the project, engineering, inspections, all that.
So does this mean we have to pull Ann away from something for 2 weeks to get this done by the end of the month?
No, actually, and again, that goes back to PEC. They've got the staff. Kristen used to work at WAMPO, and Mitch used to work at WAMPO. So we're going to use them to assist us with this to get it, because we only have a couple weeks to go, and they can do that for us. And the nice thing is they can help us tell the story and stuff. So.
Do you have an idea of what the upside? So the downside case is the city carries $80,000 a year. What's the upside case look like here? Do we have any projections on if this goes well, what the upside case is?
No, because we don't know what it would be developed. I mean, if it's going to be 80-acre industrial user that's going to come to you and want an IRB, and they're not, so they're not going to want to pay property taxes. So we can't say, well, we're going to get property
10 years
taxes
out.
off. Yeah. Now we know that there's housing down here. If this were to be developed in housing or apartments, then that's a different story. Then we would see some tax revenue to benefit covering that cost.
But if it is all industrial, they're going to pay a little bit what would they pay the difference there? Or did you?
Right. So we would sell 80 acres and we'd say, okay, the benefit district for 80 acres is $10,000.
Right. So then we get all the infrastructure free. That would still be the upside. And then in 10 years, whoever's on the council would love us because we'll start, and we are, as a city, we need more of that type of stuff. With my memory of the 10, 15-year plan or whatever number it is. So that would be, I'd see that as a huge upside, right? Like you don't have to put just having them there, even if you give the 10-year IRB is a big upside. I know we won't see it initially or whatever, but for the city, it's a long term.
Well, and that's what Ted, we were talking
City's
earlier,
better off.
is that, he's projecting out 10 years and he's looking at IRBs that you or the previous council issued that are going to be coming on the tax rolls here in the next year or probably 5 years, 2026. he's got it figured out.
Push you a little quicker.
So you're right. There's going to things that you did or the previous council did. You're going to see them in 2026.
But some did come off, didn't they?
Yeah, there's small
Couple.
ones.
So small ones, yeah.
Portional ones, which
Right.
I'll start reporting that a little better to you guys on which ones. But the majority, some of the bigger ones are coming in 2016. There's one big one that did.
Okay. So do we go ahead with this? I mean, it's just consensus thing right now. I mean, you have to put something before the council to approve, right?
Yeah, right. 'Cause
Yeah.
we would
Does that
have to
mean we
apply
have to have
for it, and then I'm sure it's going to be like the WAMPO thing where we'd get a contract or something that you'd have to approve to.
So we could still say no. You just don't want us to completely waste your time that we're guaranteed going to say no matter what, right?
So,
Exactly.
so I think the deadline for the application is the 28th of
Uh-huh.
February. So we'll have a council meeting next Tuesday, the 15th, that we can actually make an official approval of something, but they just need no direction if
Do
we're
we
going to.
need an actual approval or is this?
Well,
something we
that's
just-
what I don't know.
If you're basically what Joel said, if you're saying that, you know what, if you get this grant, we'll think pretty hard about it, then I can do it. But if you're all going to say, no, there's no upside to this, we're not going to issue 1.2 million, or we're not going to take 1.2 million ARPA funds, so we don't care, don't apply for it.
I don't hear anybody
I
saying.
don't hear that.
So I'll throw one more wrench in at the moment. Since we have to go under the railroad, how much trouble is that going to be?
Oh, all that permitting.
I better add
You're
another.
going to build an overpass?
We're going to go over?
They probably own the airspace too.
I'll add $1 million to the project.
There you go.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but you're right.
Yeah.
A couple places.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a
Like
potential.
there's three of them, I see.
Because
Well, and
there's
you're going to be running two
It's right
lines.
there,
So I don't know if
there's
that's going
there.
to make double
Well,
everything.
You gotta have
or-
separation on them, so because
Yeah.
you can't have water and sewer. is only-
yeah.
Would all be under, which is good, better.
Right.
Yeah.
Just tell me, you want more use of that track, you gotta approve this. Okay, so are there other issues we need to discuss? If not, I will dismiss, let everybody go home and have a great evening, and we will see you next Tuesday. Thank you.